Tonight I committed to making a video, wanting to read a poem that I wrote around my father. And I was nearly going to give up on it because I feel agitated tonight. And then I thought, you know what? This is a good time to do a video. I'm not sure what the agitation is, but I think a lot of men feel agitation at night after a day of labour and the weight of family and children and future and past. And I used to watch my father stay up late and stay up alone. I'm certainly not in that tonight. My wife's out there. I'm just finishing up the day's business for our business that we run in a counselling practice, and we'll probably have a cup of tea. But I feel that agitation. I feel the ghost of it. There was a great. I'm going to try and remember this band's name. Red House Painters, I think. Sun Kill Moon. They wrote a song called Glen Tipton. It's just heavy and droning, but it has that line about his father staying up late, staying up alone. And I think a lot of men do that to avoid intimacy, and at times I'll still do it to avoid intimacy. Intimacy can still be hard and tough. But I thought I want to take a punt tonight and try and do this anyway. I just recently went to a John Eldridge boot camp, and I'm going to do a video on that. I was just so impressed. I really wanted it to be a transformational weekend, and it certainly was. I got baptized there. It was just outrageous how powerful and initiated they were, but I'll do that in another video. But it just inspired me again to the men's work and this poem that I mentioned on Monday night in our Breaking Free group around hugging my father. And I suppose the other legacy I bring into this is that the Eldridge material, it's the first time I've really had the Christian message woven into it, but I spent a lot of time around, men trying to grow themselves up in the last 25 years. And I had lunch with a New Zealand man, Rex McCann, the other day, and it was great to see him. And I pulled this off the wall at my first pass at trying to make this video tonight. But I remember I want to read 3 poems, and one I wrote standing in the cliff face, staring into a storm, being nearly blown off this sort of cliff by this amazing, powerful wind. And I was in my warrior at that time, and we spent some time together after it with these men. And then we, on the last day, just before he flew back to New Zealand, I flew back to Sydney from Perth, we ended up buying these swords. He bought his own sword, a sword that spoke to him, and I bought this sword that spoke to me. My kids love this sword. They always wonder what it is and why I've got it. And but I bought it at that point to signify that warrior. We'd spent some really heavy initiating time together, and I respected him, and so I have this on the wall in my office. And I was just really curious and interested in going to the Eldridge retreat. There's 2 broadswords up there on stage. They're talisman for that warrior stage of masculinity. I'm not going to talk much more about that because I am gearing up to do a video on that. It's just it feels I need to do it justice. I've been listening to Fathered by God and Wild at Heart and some of their podcasts just to try and do it justice. So 3 poems, 4 men. And the one I'll start is around men's grief. And it was where I bought this sword, and I wrote it in Adelaide. So I might even dedicate this one to Bonnie Gibson, a Christian men's worker who's another initiated man. He ran that retreat over there. It's called Blood and Water. There is magic in men's grief. Stone crumbles, tears carve canyons into hard places. Some turn away, some turn to face, reflections, children, broken dreams. One leg limps, drags, one eye droops, disabled, and docks, laid forever dry, flood with blood and water. I'll read that again. There is magic in men's grief. Stone crumbles, tears carve canyons into hard places. Some turn away, some turn to face, reflections, children, broken dreams. One leg limp, drags. One eye droops, disabled. And docks, laid, forever dry, flood with blood and water. I think why I wanted to do this video tonight in a bit of an agitated state is because this is the journey. This is the journey. It's not pretty. I do it for a living. I listen to people talk from their heart, and it's not pretty when we confront different parts of us. As Robert Bliss said, not everything gets healed by holding it up to the light, you know. And in at my father's wedding, Bly, that was a bit of a tribute in there about that. If a man doesn't limp, if he doesn't show his wound, if he doesn't show it to the world, his children will limp it, others will limp it, the walls will limp it. And I must say, I'm still not the best at that, at showing my limp. I like to hide it, and it's never any good when I do that. So the idea of to finally face your wound. Robert Bly also says that the doorway to your bliss is through the wound. So this idea that we have to grieve. If we don't grieve, then things will carry our limp. The next poem, and this is the poem I was going to read for the Breaking Free group, and this is a poem I wrote about my dad. Now my dad was my adopted father. I don't know my real father. I haven't really pursued him. I've met my birth mother. I don't know my real father. But my adopted father was an Englishman from a long line of Englishmen, and they didn't hug, they didn't feel, they just sat, put the kettle on and worked. But in recovery, slowly but surely, my father, we learned to hug each other. Before he died, he used to nestle his neck into the nape of my neck, which was just a long way from where we started. And there's things I do that still remind me of him. I sigh. My dad used to say gee whiz all the time, and I say that a lot. And I sigh a lot too, unfortunately, but I do it. So I wrote this about our first hug. He used to have a pacemaker, and I used to wear a medicine bag, had long hair, I was in a shamanism phase. I'm a fashion victim, still am. And so when we used to hug, I'd have to move my medicine bags. It always hit his pacemaker. It was always a bit weird. But we never ever did it real well. Americans mightn't understand this, for my American friends, but it wasn't until you guys came out here for the first World Convention they had here that, man, we weren't hugging each other in NA, really. Not in my circles in the western suburbs. And Americans that come out and just knock our hands out of the way and pull us in for a big hug, And now I hug my friends and love hugging my kids. So this is about the first time I hugged my dad, and a bit about the relationship I had with him. I'll try and do this poem justice. It's called Older Now. We're older now. My lines are beginning to match his. We've talked of prostates and old mates like it wasn't possible before. He hugged me at Christmas. We had talked about it, and although it wasn't requested, just gestured. I felt it melt something in my heart. It was uncomfortable for two, though, for we did not know what to do, for both our fathers had not done this before. Since then, when we meet, it is still with uncertainty. My one hand will go out to meet his two spread wide, and we quickly reverse our positions and fumble into each other's arms. Friendly strangers who share the same history, although mine is much shorter than his. He asked me to go bush soon, just me and him. I'm so excited I don't know where to begin. So many questions, yet I've been fed silence for so long. I am scared of the consequences of truth. We're older now. His hair's gone grey, some fallen away, and to his surprise I got mine cut the other day. I look more like a man, Mum did say. Everything changes to our dismay. But now I know I share mistakes I've made from plans a reckless youth outlaid. He understood, he made the same, he only tried to shield my pain. So here we are, older now, each facing off a sacred cow. His life is coming to an end and mine is taking another bend. And we're going bush to find some gold, and he's going to teach me the things he knows. And I'm finally willing to learn instead of thinking I know it all. I think you get to that point when you're a son that you realise that, especially when you become a father yourself. At this time I wasn't a father, that was around the bend. It's really when I wrote that, mine's taking another bend. Man, it took another bend, all right. And it's been a wonderful bend. But there's things, once I did heal some of the wound about my father, I was able to see some of the good things he gave me. He certainly was a loyal man, and he stayed with my mother through many mental illnesses and never gave up on the family in that regard. He just didn't have emotional or intellectual intimacy, and he just didn't know how to do it. But he was loyal, and he taught me how to love in that regard, you know, through doing anything for the family. Another poem that I wrote in regards to this sword, as well as Blood and Water, at the same time I wrote this, and I'll finish on this. If we can grieve, and if we can sort of face the wounding we got from our father and then get reparented through a band of brothers and with the Heavenly Father, then if you can stand and face the abyss, then something happens, something big. You begin that journey of warrior and into king, and hopefully sage if you are committed and follow it through. So I wrote this also standing on that cliff. It's called Nurturing the Glimmer. Clouds white stare into the blue-black of the horizon fury, electric, cracking the skulls of the sleeping. Wounds gape and blood rains, soaking the white robes of naivete. Trunk thighs root deep into dark soil, open-chested, heart-pumping, screams of rage from the whiplash smiles of youth, falling like seeds into the hair-stuffed ears of old men. The hail of the leader into the gale carries far to those behind. In fact, it is the wind's destiny to tear it from their throats. They only have to trust its force, stare vice-like into its eye, finally seeing the boy and nurturing the glimmer. So there's some poems. I think it's a little bit of a preface or a prelude to me diving in and talking about the John Eldridge experience. I might do that tomorrow or the next day. I just really want to do it justice. I'm so given to by those men, and but I'm also, you know, I've come from sort of 25 years of men stuff now out of my 32 years, probably even a bit more. But I'll talk more about that in the Eldridge one. So remember, please be gentle with your hearts. And to any of you guys staying up alone, yeah, hang in there. Use it also as the time of prayer and nurturing, and reach out. We don't have to be alone. Take care.